How's it going? Kyle Baldwin.
Oh, yeah.
Welcome to the Poor Sports Podcast. What kind of an honor is it to be on one of the least listened to podcasts in the Seattle sports landscape?
I haven't done too many podcasts, so I'm pretty honored. Yeah, we've been trying to set this up for a while, so finally figured
the
out.
failures were on my end, right? Like my memory is that I fucked up the schedule. That seems correct, right?
Yeah, I think there was a day or two where I couldn't do it for whatever reason.
Yeah, but it was a day or two that you were like, I can't do it. These are the days, and then I was like, let's schedule on these other days, and then I had to reschedule because yeah, okay. Thank you for making it seem like it was a mutual problem, but it was just me.
I can't do Tuesdays, and then a day later you were like, hey, look, can you do next Tuesday? And I was like, I can't really make that work.
Yeah, it's I got problems. I got problems over here. So Kyle Baldwin, I think, and you're KB on everything. I don't know if you're intentionally.
Yeah, no, I'm KB. My name and everything got out there when the whole Grub stuff happened, so I don't really hide my name or my face anymore, even though I used the Belichick picture for my avatar. Yeah. But yeah.
Yeah, in my mind, you are Steve Belichick. Like when I've seen you on stuff. I've seen you take pictures of yourself. I've heard you on things, and I still kind of expected when you popped up onto this podcast to be Steve Belichick.
No, unfortunately, I don't have the lettuce like he does. But
dude, he's got it going on. When he got hired, how did you feel about it? Like initially, I don't know if your Steve Belichick avatar is ironic or actually enthusiastic about Steve Belichick.
Well, I hated the Patriots. I kind of always have hated the Patriots.
Sure.
But once he got hired, I thought it was pretty cool. It was just have that name recognition. The rumors had been swirling for a little while before it became official as well. So once he got hired, I thought it was pretty cool. And then the intro that they posted, the graphic that they edited was his mullet pic that I just thought was so cool. I was like, I gotta use this as my avatar, and then put that on there, and have just let it ride since then.
Yeah, it's crazy. Are you a Gold Star Seattle sports fan? Like, are your favorite teams all Seattle sports teams?
Yeah.
Okay, so same boat. That's actually like the kind of genesis of this podcast. Is I wanted to when Alex and I started it. It's nice to have someone who just agrees with you on who your favorite teams are on every episode. And it's very strange to have Pete Carroll's son and Bill Belichick's son on the same coaching staff, because it's very conflicting as a Seattle sports fan, because obviously you have hatred for the Belichicks because of their time in New England, and then you have to love Brennan Carroll. It's part of the rules. And even obviously, Carroll's had like a turn in Seattle. We used to hate him when he coached for USC, and now he's, in our hearts and minds all the time. We love Pete Carroll, and then to have those guys on the same staff, you're like, these guys should hate each other, right? Like they have to hate each other. We hate one of them. Why wouldn't they hate each other? But it's an odd situation.
It's definitely surreal, and especially if you're a Seattle sports fan that's like a Duck fan or a Cougar or stuff like that. It's kind of weird to see that both those guys are at UW now. Probably made some hate UW even more.
Absolutely. And it's weird, like the idea of Bill Belichick being in Washington practices, like the amount of things that would have to happen a couple of years ago, if you had to imagine all the things that would have had to happen. So you were talking about the Grub stuff. That's like obviously the I think you had like a period of local fame, regional fame.
Yeah.
Because you broke the Ryan Grubb to Seahawks news, because you saw it was John Schneider, Ryan Grubb, I want to say Mike McDonald, and then one other guy. Who was the other guy? Do you remember?
The other guy is I can't think of his name. I think it's like Steve something. He's the linebacker coach, I want to say.
Gotcha.
Came from Green Bay. He was with them. Kind of looked like Greg Popovich, but I didn't know who he was. But once I saw Grubb, that was kind of all I was focused on. But I didn't technically break the news. I was just kind of the first man to see him in Seattle, because there had been rumors swirling that week that he had flown back into town after being at Alabama. And I'd kind of seen those on Twitter. And I was going down to Dino's anyway to meet a friend. And when I was driving down there, I thought, like, man, what if, like, because I've seen Schneider in there a bunch. I hadn't seen McDonald before then. But I was like, what are the chances that they might just like come in here? So I met the girl that I was going down there with, and I was like, let's get a table by the door just in case like we can see who comes in. And like an hour within being there, I was like, oh shit, there's Ryan Grubb, and the rest is kind of history.
So were you there on like a date, or were you there?
No, it's just a friend from high school that I was catching up with that
Because
I hadn't seen in a while, and then we didn't do much catching up after that because I was just too focused on the sports stuff.
was that friend annoyed with you for how unfocused on her you were?
I had to explain what exactly we were witnessing and what was going on, and she was pretty confused with the whole Twitter blow up because I was like, "Oh yeah, I posted that he's here, and like everyone wants me to take a picture of him," and she kind of convinced me to take the picture. Honestly, I didn't want to do it because I was like, I where they're sitting, I was like, I don't know how I'm gonna pull it off, and you can kind of see that by how that picture turned out because it's
Yeah,
basically blurry. But
it's like when you're driving past something and you take a picture of it.
yeah, I was on my way to the bathroom and just snapped it. I didn't even have to go to the bathroom. I was just like, that's the only way I can get this picture in. And then once I got in there, I checked if it was a good enough picture because I was like, I'm just going to take more on the way out if that wasn't good enough. But turned out all right, and then sent that out, and then kind of, you know, gained a following after that.
Did you aspire at any point to have a career as a photojournalist, or
No, but I think I didn't exactly put a good foot forward with that,
what
like
it so
quality wise.
oh yeah, that's fair. I mean, you got to get the picture though, right? Like as
Yeah,
a war season journalist as you are now, you got to get the picture out.
yeah. If there's a
But
job to just sit at bars and wait for different celebrities and whatnot to come in, I could probably master that. But
yeah,
yeah,
I think I could be your assistant. I could at least be a spotter for you.
yeah,
Um, what were your feelings? Because so obviously, as a Washington Huskies fan, it was like uh, a tough couple days, right? You're like the team loses, and I think as a Seattle sports fan, I take like losses get easier. Devastating losses keep getting easier because we experience them all the time, right? Like
hmm
I think I was probably the most sad I've been. The combination of losing the national championship and then Kalen DeBoer leaving for Alabama made me more sad than I've been since the Seahawks lost to the Patriots.
yeah,
And the Grubb, I was like, you got to keep Grubb, make him the head coach of the Huskies. And Alex was talking me out of it. Other people I know were talking me out of it because he's got no head coaching experience, and the whole modern. I'm like a little skeptical of whether that matters in the modern landscape of college football, but that was like a big thing. Is he has no college head coaching experience, he doesn't have a recruiting pipeline, all the stuff that everyone was saying. And he leaves, and I was sad. I was like, this dude's like one of the most advanced offensive minds, and now he's going to go take this job at Alabama. That like there's people that leave professional jobs to go be coordinators
yeah,
at Alabama. Like that's a pretty big job, and I was pretty sad. Not only that he was going to Alabama, but like watching that offense grow. Well, I guess like first off, did you how fucked up were your the week after the national championship, and what was the time? It was like a little over a week, I think, before Grubb got announced, maybe even 2 weeks, right? Because they hadn't
yeah,
even I don't even think the Seahawks had announced McDonald yet until a little while after that.
yeah. Well, I didn't go to work Monday, Tuesday after or Tuesday, Wednesday after the Natty, so it hurt pretty bad. I kind of
Was
thought
was that emotional or
both,
dehydration? We'll call it.
both, because I went down to the Sugar Bowl, and
Oh shit.
the whole season I kind of had this feeling of like we were just like a team of destiny. The results kind of spoke for themselves in that aspect. So even like as the national championship's going on, like they score right before half to cut the gap, and I was like, okay, the second half we're just gonna like come out and win this game, and it didn't turn out that way. So it definitely was pretty devastating. And then 4 or 5 days later, DeBoer's gone, and then with Grubb, I kind of would agree with like Alex and other people that there were some similarities to like Jimmy Lake in terms
Sure.
of you have this ace assistant coach coordinator that hasn't gotten any scrutiny, is just performed like as well as anyone in his role. But once you upgrade him, does that still happen? So I wasn't totally on board with the like Grubb head coach type of deal. So I kind of realized like once DeBoer left that it probably meant that everyone was gone.
Yeah.
Um, I don't think I would have minded if Ryan got the head coaching job, but kind of goes back to the Lake thing. Like you just don't know. It's just such a uncertainty. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah,
I felt. What did you feel? Do you remember your feelings when Kalen DeBoer got hired?
hired by UW or
Yes.
Alabama.
Yeah. Sorry, that's what I meant. But when he got hired by UW, like when, because I don't remember being particularly enthusiastic about that. What, he was like Fresno State's head coach. It's like, okay, like,
Yeah,
and a
it was
guy who's
somewhat.
been around a long time, right? Like, there's a big youth movement in coaching, and you're like, okay, like a 50-year-old dude that's was at Fresno State is not going to excite me.
Yeah,
And so
it
to
was.
me, the Grubb thing was like back to an exciting, would have been an exciting hire, right? Even though he's also an older guy, but like a guy where you're taking a risk on a guy.
Mhm. Well, I remember being pretty underwhelmed with DeBoer because I think like Matt Campbell and there might have been a couple others that were sort of rumored to be the leaders,
Yeah,
and it almost felt like they settled on DeBoer. And obviously, it turned out that we lucked into him and made the right choice. But I remember being underwhelmed, and then there was all the jokes about like Fresno North and uh, you know, we brought in Penix, and people are joking about Penix, his knee's going to fall off, and all this stuff. And it obviously didn't turn out that way. But that's just like the crazy thing with coaching hires is you really don't know. I mean,
sure.
someone can go out and hire like Nick Saban, and you know what you're getting, but there's so few guys that you can say that about.
So then, obviously, we're leading up to talk about the Apple Cup, but they end up with Jed Fish, and if I was gonna compare without the like Jim Lambright lead in, he reminds me as a hire so much of Neuheisel, like a guy who, and maybe not even. I feel like the ceiling is so. It feels like it's like an 11-win ceiling. This is my you can disagree with me. The Jed
For
Fish
this
thing
year,
that feels no, not this year. I'm saying like whatever amount of time Jed Fish is. I have this actually. You can argue with me on this if you like, because I haven't brought this up to anyone, but Alex and my wife, who doesn't care about Huskies football. So, Jed Fish, to me, if he's here a third season, it probably means the Huskies have been mediocre throughout his tenure at Washington. Like, it's probably bad news if he makes it into the third or fourth season, because it means that they didn't ascend to a point that he could leave for Florida or leave for the NFL, basically.
yeah,
And that's kind of, to me, it feels like they're in this. It's a transition phase, but one of those like purgatory type transition phases where it's not like they have this elite guy and he's going to be around and you hope you squeeze a national championship out of him before he leaves, right? The way it feels with players right now, where it's like you have an elite player, you hope he sticks around for 2 years, because if you have him for 2 years, you might be able to win a national championship. It doesn't feel that way with Fish. It feels like Fish is, it's just continued resume building. He's going to probably win 9 or 10 games all 2 or 3 years he's here and move on to another job. And this isn't like, I'm not the one breaking this. He's had whatever 26 jobs in 24 years or something like that,
hmm
some crazy amount. But it just feels like, it just felt like so. It was like the antithesis of the DeBoer hire, where there was no like, there's no excitement. The upside feels very low. Obviously, the whole NIL thing has shifted around, and you're like later in the process starting it. But what was like, how did you feel when they hired Jed Fish?
I thought it was probably the best candidate that they could have hired at the time, and I think the bouncing around of jobs, I kind of have a different view of it. Is that he didn't play the sport,
Sure.
was like a student assistant at Florida under Spurrier. So I think he really had to grind it, like he had to grind his way to the top. And I think that kind of goes hand in hand with all the different jobs he's taken. Uh, I think that I kind of think that he loves like the Seattle scene with all the money and stuff like that. In terms of he's almost like a new Heisel type, like car salesman ish
Yeah.
coach. So I think he feeds off that. You know, if he puts together like a big season and bounces to Florida, I wouldn't be surprised. But part of me thinks that he would have no problem staying here and trying to build a legacy. And I think that's kind of what wasn't my first reaction when he got hired. It was kind of like I think I was just so still disappointed by the Natty that I didn't really have much thought other than being like, well, we're definitely not going to the Natty again anytime soon. So,
Yeah, I
uh,
mean that had to be like, obviously losing. It ended up being like what, like there's no returning starters or one returning starter or something like that, and there's some kind of like,
yeah,
Bruner has obviously like played starter snaps, and I'm not, whatever, but it was like there was no way it was very unlikely to happen, like astronomically unlikely to happen anyway. But yeah, it did kind of feel like it felt like I mean, it really felt like DeBoer could be the Don James of your and my era. Are you 30 or are you 29? I was doing,
30. Yeah,
okay, you're 30.
yeah,
I'm 38. Like the Don James of our era, we've never seen. And maybe Washington will never have that guy again, by the way. Like it's possible that's just never going to happen again. But you do see these like institutional coaches at other places, and Washington used to have a guy like that, and it doesn't feel like Jed Fish is going to be that guy to me. Maybe I'm wrong. It felt like DeBoer could have been that guy. Like going into the national championship game, naive, not thinking about Nick Saban, not thinking about the fact that DeBoer might be. I mean, and if it wasn't, if it wasn't Nick Saban, if it wasn't the Alabama job, there's no saying that he doesn't leave for another job. That might have been the only one, but like that wasn't even on my mind. The idea that DeBoer could leave, you were just like elated at the experience of seeing your team really probably outperform their talent level, right? Like I
mm-hmm.
love Michael Penix. I think Michael Penix developed into an incredible quarterback. The Michael Penix that was around like the beginning of his redshirt junior year was not the quarterback that graduated last year and became was it the 8th overall pick? Like that dude became an incredible quarterback, and you were hoping to see how many iterations of that, like how many guys can Kalen DeBoer turn into these great quarterbacks, and all of that goes away. Like every part of that, I was thinking this is the start of a 20-year run of success, 20-year run of being an elite program for Washington, and then it's
Yeah,
like, oh shit, now you're in this, maybe 2-3 year purgatory period, maybe not. If he's Neuheisel, if he's the used car salesman, which is kind of what I agree with you on that, I feel like I'm not excited about what that is for the Huskies the next whatever amount of time. If it's longer than 3 years, like I said, I think to me, it probably means something bad happened, or means something mediocre happened, probably more accurately. Like, I don't think this team is a 3-win team and Jed Fish sticks around that long, but I don't know. Am I too pessimistic? I don't know. Maybe it's just being a Seattle sports fan. I'm just like,
no, I think what we just experienced with the Apple Cup helps kind of back that up.
sure.
I think it'll be a lot of unpredictability. There will be games where, you know, you play Sark like undisciplined football, like we just saw on Saturday, where you have chances to win games, maybe you don't put it away. But then the reverse of that is like Arizona had games last year in year 3 where they probably shouldn't have won, and you know ended up winning, or like taking USC to overtime or almost beating UW. So it's kind of back to just like the unpredictability of everything. I do have my reservations, kind of similar to you, about the longevity of it, and what kind of success he can have. I really have no expectations. Like you said, I think DeBoer was almost the Don James of our generation in a way. He could have been here for a long time, and I still think it's weird that his daughter was committed to the softball team and she's still there, and he
Right.
took a job across the country. So the whole thing kind of was like shocking in a way, because in a lot of ways it makes sense, because Alabama's Alabama, and he said publicly that that was like the only job that he probably would have left for.
Sure.
But yeah, just
Do
kind
you
of
think that? Do you think that he would have left for, like, let's say that obviously the Texas job is, I think Sark has resurrected his career and probably holds that job pretty tightly. But if the Texas job comes about, or the like LSU or Clemson or something like that came around and was open, and these might not all be perfect examples, but like these historically great programs, do you think that Alabama was truly? I don't think he's leaving for some like. I don't think he was necessarily looking to leave at all costs, but I have a hard time believing that it was just the Alabama job. Like that was the one job. Auburn. If Auburn opens up, do you think he's going to Auburn? Like how many schools do you think there were? Do you think it was truly one?
I think it's probably like Alabama. You could probably throw in Ohio State,
Sure.
Michigan, just because of his Midwest ties.
God, that was the other thing
But
is with There was that was the first inkling I had was the idea that Harbaugh would go to the NFL and he would go to Michigan.
yeah, and that very well could have happened.
Sure.
Because I could be wrong, but I think that kind of developed after uh, Kalen had gone to Alabama. So
Yeah, I think that's right.
who knows if he would have been a candidate there? But I do think that there was probably, the Alabama thing. He can say that, and there's some truth to it because that kind of only that saying or whatever only qualifies 4 or 5 different schools. Um,
Yeah.
but I do think that's accurate. Where like I don't think he was really like looking to leave, but I don't think Washington was his end game when it came to his goals in the coaching world.
Yeah, and it's hard to be like you want to be angry at him, but you're also like he coached arguably like the best 2 year stretch of Washington football since Don James. Probably the best 2 year stretch of Washington football since Don James. Maybe there's the Chris Peterson playoff year. Maybe I don't remember what they did the year before that, but but also to win a playoff game and play in the national championship is huge. Like that's
Yeah.
that's
Oh yeah.
so
Yeah.
uh
The guy delivered like you know, two of the most fun years I've ever had as a fan of the
yeah.
team. So it's kind of hard to be like, oh, fuck this guy.
I know, and then I also do kind of feel that way still, though. Like, there's part of me
Yeah.
that still feels that
Yeah.
way.
Well, now
Yeah,
that you see what happened Saturday, it's kind of like,
yeah. So let's talk about that. So I will say, and I've said this like the first 2 weeks. First off, I thought the team should have been ranked. I thought they should have just given it to him. Like, let them be in the top 25. They were set. Oh, by the way, the pre 2 p.m. Rainier, I love it.
yeah. Well,
That's
you just got to do what you got to do.
Yeah, I'm excited about that. Is today one of the days that you're like, I'm available all day?
No, not exactly,
Okay.
but
You're
we're doing
certainly
it anyway.
drinking. This is, dude. I have 2 kids. Drinking Rainier at 2 p.m. on a Wednesday. I miss that so much. Like,
Yeah,
I'm like, fuck, I have so much to do after I get off this podcast still.
yeah. No kids. I knew I was doing this, and I was like, I could crack one open before
Oh,
I
yeah.
go.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Please. That you should, as you should. Anytime you're on a podcast of this listenership, you should definitely.
yeah,
Um, So yeah, the first 2 games, I was like, I kind of thought there was nothing you could learn like positive.
hmm
You could learn negatives, and the one thing I was worried about was much like everyone else was the offense started slow. Then the offense started kind of slow against Washington State, but the positive is your avatar had not allowed a defensive touchdown through those first 2 games, and I think like through that game there were points where uh the defense was getting pressure the whole game. Like the defensive line was good. And that was kind of like, to me, that was a positive. And, a quarterback that can run like John Mateer can run is going to be tough to scheme for, especially with a group of defensive guys that are many of them new and a bunch of them you're not familiar with as a coach. So, like, to me, the entire loss falls on Fish.
yeah,
It falls on Fish and Carroll, but like even then you're like Carroll, whatever you feel about Carroll, he's not the one calling the plays. So to me, it's like that's a 100% Jed Fish loss. The defense didn't play bad enough to not win that game. A Washington Huskies offense should be able to score more than 24 points against the
yeah,
Cougars.
yeah.
Is there any? I mean, are you like what's your feeling on Jed Fish right now?
That's my feel on it too. I thought the defense played fine. The penalties were brutal. They extended, I think, 2 or 3 drives, and I think maybe 1 or 2 of them ended in scores.
Sure.
Uh, so that's a big difference right there. I thought the
Yeah,
defense played
the penalty is a
fine.
fair point.
Uh, Offensively, I didn't understand the lack of Coleman usage. I
Sure.
mean, we saw that in week 1 with the slow starts. It's like things weren't happening, and all of a sudden you just hand it to this refrigerator of a running back that you have that runs a 4.5, and then all of a sudden things start clicking. And the Cougs did a great job at containing Coleman, so it's nothing like you know it's more so you didn't give your best player more opportunities,
Yeah.
which I think as an offensive guy, it doesn't really make sense if you're Jed Fish. He had 11 carries going into that last drive uh, where they got stuffed at the one.
Right, and it's not like
And
you've
I,
been down 2 scores the whole game or something like that. You're not playing catch up the
yeah,
entire game.
and I get that the Cougs were loading the box. I was there, and I was right down by the goal line when that last play happened. The Cougs were loading the box, and they had opportunities on the outside with the play action pass game, and they were taking those. And Jackson had a big game, and but I thought there was more room there to just like that guy has to touch the ball 20, like in a close game, 25 times minimum. He's built for that. He's durable. He's shown that his whole career. So the fact that he only touched it 14 times is kind of like what sticks out to me.
Sure.
2-3 days later, as I think about the loss and all that. But it was just like poorly executed, poorly coached. I heard and read a lot of stuff about the energy of the team before the game being down compared to the Cougs that were on the other side of the field during warmups. It was very like NFL business like on the Husky side, and then on the other side, Cougs are fired up, all emotional, stuff like that. So it it leaves me with a lot of questions just in terms of it reminded me of like the Mike Leach Apple Cups where it just seemed for whatever reason like they treated that as just another game and they could show up and do what they always do and it would work. And I kind of got that feeling being in the stadium with the Jed and how they ran, certain plays on offense and whatnot, and just the usage, like bringing in Williams. I think Damon's going to be a great player and he's the future of the program, basically. But Rogers was 10 of 14 for like 150 yards after they missed. Wazoo missed that field goal. Rogers scrambled for 17 on the first play. It was
Right.
13-10 UW at this time, late second quarter. They probably could have gone down and had like a 4 or 5 minute drive, either kicked a field goal, scored a touchdown. Wazoo has it for like a minute or so, and then it goes to half. They pull Rogers, go to Demond, go 3-and-out from then on, and then that's kind of where I feel like the game was lost. And that's
Yeah.
like a coaching thing, which is hard to. That's frustrating for a fan because it's like if you let your guys go out there and play, you may get a different result. But because you did this move as a coach, kind of falls back on you. And like I said, I get it, Demond's the future and whatnot, but I don't
Yeah.
know.
Well, I mean, it's different in college in a couple ways because there's no benefit to losing games, right? Like in the NFL,
Yeah,
you're like if you lose, maybe you get a better draft pick, whatever. There's no benefit to that. In fact, it has like the inverse effect. The more you lose, the less talent you can bring into your program. And yeah, I thought it was like I agree with you on that. That it was like kind of cocky to
hmm
assume so much that you're going to win that game. And there's like packages. Obviously, Damon Williams brings something that Will Rogers doesn't. But like that's not everything that happened, right? There was like drives that were this is a Damon Williams, or there was a drive I think in the first half, right? There was like this is a Damon Williams drive, and it's like that, to me that's like taking for granted the fact that they were going to beat Washington State. Yeah, that's a
absolutely.
great point actually, and that's not that I think that even like I don't know. I mean, of course, Jed Fish understands rivalry games. These guys aren't stupid, right? Like they understand that this opposing team, this is like their Super Bowl for the year, unless they make it into the college football playoff. And it's one of the probably rare instances now in like the NIL era and the transfer portal era where the like a Washington State team is really not going to have the same kind of people transferring, the amount of people transferring in as other schools. So there probably is like a true emotional response to that game on the Washington State side that probably doesn't exist in a lot of matchups across the country. And yeah, just to
Yes.
take that for granted is super frustrating. To take any win for granted, and that's kind of the way that I felt. So my big annoying thing, and I don't want to be like, I don't want to shit on a college athlete all the time. Denzel Boston not turning the third down play upfield and trying to score was so frustrating to me. Just going out of bounds easily was so frustrating to me because you can't take for granted that you're going to score there.
Yeah. I think it was almost the angle, though. I mean, I think he could have done more, but I was sitting right there, like probably 2 yards into the goal line, 10, 15 rows up. And from my angle, I didn't even think about it at the time. I was like kind of wondering how close he got, but just him running basically vertically across the field and then catching that ball and turning up like he did. It looked natural, it looked normal. So I didn't really think anything of it. So I'm not sure if I think he could have done more, but I'm not sure if that's just so much the camera angle that you got from
Gotcha.
seeing it on TV. Uh, but yeah, I think it just goes back to everyone could have done more. It's circling back to like the Demond stuff and Fish stuff is like it seemed like every opportunity to seize momentum that UW had, they chose to be like, let's try this or let's try that.
Right.
Like, and that, and like you said, it's like there's no benefit to losing a game in college because, like, look at their position now. Like, credit to the Cougs, but UW, shot itself in the foot and could have won that game. They'd be 3-0 playing Northwestern. You would hope, barring a hangover this week, that they'll take care of business against Northwestern. They'd be 4-0 heading to New Jersey to play Rutgers, and things would have got tough there regardless. But it's just a whole different feel, not only for the team but for the fan base,
Yeah.
coaching staff, etc. So
Yeah,
just
it's one of those
overall,
things.
kind of a shit sandwich of a game.
Yeah, and then obviously the final play, there's they call a timeout to get out of the look they're in. Spend the time on the timeout, and then what they end up running is the option with Will Rogers to the short side of the field. Um, I After the game, I heard Jed Fish say like whatever he wished he didn't switch out of the previous look or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think he's like kind of turned back on that a little bit and been a little more like, no, that was I'm fine with the decision, bad result, good decision or whatever. And I think like I I'll give a little bit of grace. I said this on a previous episode of this, but if Ryan Grubb calls the reverse to Roma Dunze last year and he gets stopped behind the line of scrimmage, the Huskies don't win the Apple Cup. They don't probably make the college football playoff. They don't play for the national championship. Probably Kalen DeBoer doesn't go play doesn't go coach Alabama. Ryan Grubb's probably not coaching the Seahawks. A lot of stuff's different if that one play goes differently. And just if it went good or bad, that didn't make it like a good or bad decision. I have a tough time with this specific decision. Like I hate doing the like scrutinizing a play call because it goes badly. I'm a process over results guy. I try to be that in everything in my life. This to me felt like this. It was just again, it was just too cute. It was like, how much can we assert our dominance? We're going to do this thing that's like the degree of difficulty. We're just going to find all these ways to just ratchet up the degree of difficulty. It's to the short side of the field. We have our non-mobile quarterback running it. It's the last play of the game. The Cougars have been stuffing the box the whole game. Apparently even the unblocked guys on the end of the line of scrimmage, there was more unblocked guys on the line of scrimmage than there should have been to not switch out of that look. And yeah, it just felt, every part of it felt just arrogant to me.
Yeah,
Like every part of that game just felt like arrogant and like looking past Washington State.
yeah. Like I said, it felt like another one of those let's try this moments.
Yeah.
Like we're like a arrogance of we're just better than them. Like if we run this, it's gonna work.
Yeah.
And I kind of circle back to like if they would have ran Coleman, and I posted a screenshot of what the box looked like pre-snap, and there was like when Coleman he started on the left and then he switched over the right, and when he switched over, one of the Wazoo I think DBs was supposed to slide down with him and he didn't. Like as you can see on the replay, his teammate like tries to push him and he doesn't go anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So if they would have had the option to just check out of the play, which is another thing that I have an issue with, is they talked about, like Roger said, there was no option to check out of the play. That's the play we were running. I could have lived with like if Coleman runs there and gets stuffed, it's kind of like either we didn't block it or just like credit to the Cougs for,
Yeah.
shoring that up. But I think the play call was just dumb. Like it could have been executed better, obviously, but it's like those guys on the other side have been playing with more emotion all game. This one play probably means more to them than it does to your redshirt freshman linemen that are in there just hoping they don't false start.
Yeah.
So just kind of one of those where it's like, give the ball to your best player. The built like a refrigerator and see if he can lean forward for 2 yards and you win the game. And for whatever reason, they were just like, let's not do that. And I'd be real curious to know what that first play call was that they called the timeout for. I heard
Yeah.
rumors that it was like a jet sweep or like a toss sweep to Jackson, and even then, I don't know if that works because then, like, I hate knowing that both of your play calls on like a play to win the game did involve your best player. So
Yeah, well, I'm like this. This could annoy you potentially, but I'm a pass from the one guy when it comes like the Seahawks. I'm a pass from the
yeah,
one guy. I'm
yeah,
one of these. I'm a pass from the one truther, I would say, and so I would have been fine with that. Also,
yeah,
obviously the results are bad, and it's like it's frustrating. And I will say, like, there's a part of me as I get older that I'm like a little less angry. I'm not very angry after sporting events anymore. Um, Immediately I was like, what a beautiful vindication for Washington State fans. Like they have to be
yeah,
feeling so great right now.
yeah. That's kind of what my takeaway was. Is like I was like, as soon as I think we had the two offsides on defense right after they turned the ball over after that last play, I started walking out. I was with a group of like mostly Cougars and then my one Husky buddy. And I was like, yeah, I'm leaving. I live right next door, so I was like, I'm walking home. And as I was leaving the stadium, I was like, honestly, like they kind of deserved that. Like
Yeah,
if if they would have won last year and spoiled our season, like that would have been even better for them,
sure.
and then it would have been worse for us. So it's like, hey, you know, credit to you guys.
Yeah. Um okay, we can move on from the Apple Cup. I think it's like a little bit I'm getting
It's
sad all over again.
Northwestern week.
Yeah.
We're on to
Uh
Northwestern.
the I have a theory. You grew up in Renton? Is
Yeah,
that right?
Ren Bellevue, Newcastle area.
Okay. So Renton in particular has a reputation that I think it's like the Tacoma of the East Side, I would call it. I live in Tacoma,
Yeah,
and I the one thing I think it has on Tacoma where I would lose, where I think Tacoma would lose the argument is,
we're skipping over Kent and Auburn here, and that.
yeah, these are nothing towns. I've lived in both of them. They're nothing towns. Renton is almost a nothing town. These are all just places between Seattle and Tacoma for most people, by the way. But
Yeah,
Renton is like enough on the east side, and it's close to the Seattle Seahawks practice facility that you get a little bit. This is like why, to me, there's a whole bunch of stuff in your life that led to this moment with Ryan Grubb. But one of the biggest things is growing up in Renton, right, and being familiar with Dino's Pub,
hmm
and you live in Seattle downtown. Is that what you were saying, or do you
yeah,
live in Renton
yeah.
now?
I live downtown now.
Okay. Did you live in Renton at the time, or did you?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
I was thinking, did your newfound fame somehow allow you
No,
to afford?
no, no. That was just a personal choice. Get
Gotcha.
away from renting a little bit.
Sure. Yeah, too big for Renton these days. Too famous for
Yeah,
Renton.
yeah,
Uh, but you were, and this is you gave me clearance to talk about this before. You were maybe the youngest high school head coach, at least high school basketball head coach in Washington State history. At 22 years old, you became the head
yeah.
coach of Hazen High School basketball,
21.
boys basketball. 21?
Yeah. So when I got hired, I was 21.
Oh, wow. So your first year you coached at
First
22.
season was 22. Yeah.
And so that's probably old enough that there were none of the guys on the team were at the school when you went to the school,
Yeah.
but pretty close. Like that is
hmm
very close to coaching some of your former classmates. I just got it. I mean, I had like 22 years old. I actually worked in Renton at a box factory, and I cannot imagine. I used to have to. I would not call myself a leader of men. I did have one guy that worked under me, and he was like a 50-year-old Filipino guy, and he would ask me if he could use the bathroom, and I'm like, dude, yes, you're 50 years old. Please go use the bathroom. You
Yeah.
can't ask me to use the bathroom. 22 years old, probably a bunch of dudes like bigger and maybe stronger than you. I don't know. You might be built like an ox, but probably. By the way, I saw the picture what was it a Seattle Times or News Tribune article? You didn't look like a
Yeah,
guy who was built like an ox at the time, I will
no,
say.
I'm a little more oxy now though.
Okay, okay. What was it? What was that like being the like? Did you get taken seriously by other coaches? What was your record? I guess is the other question. Did you feel like the players were because you could have been the new Brad Stevens, and now you're drinking Rainier at 2 p.m. on a
Yeah,
podcast. So what
it,
what
it's
what got you here from there?
a pretty wild story. So I coached in after I graduated high school. I was just going to Bellevue College.
Mm-hmm.
I coached at Hazen. I was
Mm-hmm.
coaching like the youth program, eighth grade team. So I was
Gotcha.
19 at the time, coaching the eighth grade team, and had fun with that. And then the next year, they hired me as the C team coach, and then that coach left, and I stayed on as the C team coach. So this was when I was like 20, yeah, 20, and then that coach left after a year. So I'd been like the only coach that was there through these two head coach turnovers, and I didn't really even think about applying for the head job because it just seemed like I wouldn't get it. Like here
Mm-hmm.
I am, 21 years old. Like I don't really have a whole lot of accolades to my name, and I applied for the job, and they ended up hiring me. And then once I got it, I was kind of like, oh shit, like now I got to run everything. Like the C team coach job's easy because you just show up and like coach all these freshmen that most of them aren't going to, play basketball 2, 3 years from now.
Sure.
So that's the easy stuff. And then now you're like having to run everything. So it was quite the experience. We had, I think they went 2-18 for 2 straight years when I was the C team coach. My
Gotcha.
C team actually really good. I think we were like second in the league. Hazen at the time was NPSL, so we were playing like Kentwood, Kent Ridge, all those schools. And they're playing in 4A. When I was there, we were playing Seamount. So we were playing like Tyee and Foster and Evergreen. So a little easier basketball competition.
Sure.
Uh, but my first year, we went 3-17, so we improved by one game.
Dang.
Sucked because we started 2-1. Uh,
Oh no.
yeah, started 2-1, and I was like, I am the best coach maybe ever. Look at this 22-year-old that's just racking up wins. And then we went 1-19 the rest of the way that year. We had a bunch of
God.
close games. I think the year before I started, our average margin of defeat was like 30 something per game. And then we had like 3 or 4 games that we lost by one possession my first year. And then second year, we won 7 games and actually made the playoffs. Beat Kentwood, who had just won state, I think, the year before, or maybe it
Oh
was 2 years
shit.
before. Beat them on a buzzer beater. Had again like 5 or 6 games that I think we lost 4 games by a total of 9 points that year combined.
Mm-hmm.
So like a 1 point loss and a 2 point loss and so forth. Uh, but then it just became a drag. Like high school coaches don't get enough credit. They don't get enough like you know they
Were
deal
you
with a
working
lot
at
of
the
shit.
school as an employee, or was it just
Yeah.
the only thing you did was show up and coach?
Once I got the head job, I got a job there as a para. So I just kind of like hung out during the day, did random stuff that kept me in the building so that I could be there at 3 o'clock when we did practices. But it just started to wear on me where it was fun to just be that young, and I, I think I always felt like I commanded the respect of all the guys, even though they were you know much younger than me or not much younger than me. I'm a very like laid back, nonchalant guy, so I don't think I give off. No one really knows how I'm feeling.
Sure.
Uh, so I think they just thought I was angry all the time because I wasn't, like cracking the same jokes with them as I would crack with like my assistant coaches and stuff.
Sure.
So when it came time to practice, it was very like serious, and I wasn't like. Now looking back, I was like, I could easily have been joking with them about like the most like inappropriate, like random stuff because we were not that far apart in age, but
Yeah.
I tried to like I always kept it like I like kind of like my mentors, I tried to act like the
Yeah.
guys that I knew that when I was coaching. But it was a fun time. But the parents really got on me, and I was just like by the end of my second year, I was just kind of over it. Kind of realized that I had to go figure out what kind of real job I wanted to get.
Sure.
Because believe it or not, coaching high school basketball doesn't really pay a whole lot. I'm working as a para at a school.
Can I
Uh,
ask you at this time? So you're 22 years old, working as a para and a high school basketball coach. What's the living situation?
I was at my parents' living at home.
Wow, isn't it
Yeah,
crazy to be a coach of children? They're living with their parents, and you're living with your parents. Isn't that
yeah,
like
yeah. And then one of my assistants was my age. I hired him. He was like a volunteer, but like we'd be like, "Hey, you want to go play Fortnite after practice?" And all the guys would be like, "What the fuck?" Like, yeah, we play that too. We're playing that too. See us on the sticks. We
Yeah,
never
dude, we're
actually,
your age. We are your
yeah,
age. Like
yeah. We're basically in your age demographic, so we do the same stuff you do.
you're
Except,
vying for the same women in some cases. Like this is we.
yeah,
That's true competition. Is yeah. That's was the because I played high school baseball and I was a pitcher, so I'd pitch one day and then just basically rest the rest of the week. I just like run and show up to practice for whatever. Like I'd be shagging fly balls during batting practice or whatever, and I'd be sitting out there with my coaches. And because of like all the baseball is a lot of downtime, so like there's already a lot of downtime in baseball. And then I started 11 of our 20 games, so 9 of those games that we were preparing for, I was not going to play in probably, or I was going to like pinch hit at some point.
hmm
And dude, I mean, I have stuff that I could like easily get these coaches fired from their jobs right now, probably if I
yeah,
brought it up, like the stuff that we talked about. Like this is
yeah,
a long time ago, and I could be like, in 2003, this coach said some shit to me that like was vile for the time, you know. And by the way, I mean, like I'm a comedian. I was not offended by it. Like I'm not offended easily, but I was like, that is a lot of trust to put in a high schooler to not let somebody else know that you're making these kind of jokes in the outfield, you know?
yeah. No, we would definitely joke around. It was so long ago. I mean, this was like 7, 8, 9 years ago, so I don't remember much. But there was a time where there was a couple times where it was just like me and like my assistant really had to check ourselves. Where we're like, hey, now, like we can't let these guys hear certain stuff and like whatnot. And like when the weirdest part was like when you're like cut day, when you're naming the roster and stuff like that, it was very like weird because I'm like, it felt like for the first time I was doing real life fantasy football with like high school kids where I'm like, yeah, I don't really want this kid. I don't want that kid. Like, let's put him on the team. Let's put him on the team. And then I was like, oh fuck, we have to post this. So I just wrote it out like on a piece of scratch paper. I was like, here's the teams. There's just like weird stuff like that where I just like was in over my head, not basically like doing what a normal guy that age would do.
Yeah.
But it was quite the experience. Once I got out of it, I've had no desire to get back into it.
Yeah, that was kind of my question. It's like that's got to be one of those things that you have to fall in love with the work, because I'm sure that it's, you know, even you hear those stories about Ryan Grubb, like we've talked about him a lot, but like I think he was the, what was it, in Sioux Falls or whatever, he was like a made like $2,500 or $1,500 for a season of coaching or something like that. And
Yeah,
that's a lot of faith to put in to yourself, and a lot of like not even desire. That's like compulsion to coach football, right? Like, and
yeah,
I'm with you. There are so many things like that where I'm like, that is not me. I do not have that compulsion. There's no part of me. I coached a little bit of baseball after I not like head coached anything. I coached and I was like, oh, dude, I hate this. This is terrible. I'm not. There's no part of me that's drawn to this. I'm not in love with the work or any of that. It's over for me. Me
yeah.
and baseball are parting ways.
It was a grind. So like when I took over, because like I said, there was two head coaches that stopped by for 6 months and then were gone. Uh, we had no basketballs. The whole basketball rack was like stolen somehow from the locker room. So we didn't have basketballs. Our varsity uniforms were like 4 years old. Half of them were missing because when the coaches left, there was no like jersey hand in. So a lot of the senior players would be like, "Oh, it'd be cool to keep my jersey," and would just keep them. So we had like 6 varsity uh, jerseys, no C team jerseys. Had no money like in the program. Like Renton School District gives you like a pat on the back and $900 every year to run your programs. So we had to do like a fundraiser. So my first year, we just killed this like youth camp fundraiser, and I actually met Brendan Carroll there. His son was in the camp.
Oh, nice.
Uh, so did that. We raised like 8 grand. We bought
That's what I'm
the,
saying, dude. Renton is on the
the
east side. You get to meet people that do not. Brendan Carroll's never been to Tacoma. I can guarantee that. He's never stepped
no
foot in Tacoma.
the 21-year-old in me at the time though. The jersey thing's funny because we needed new uniforms. Raised the 8 grand. Bought basketballs. Bought C team uniforms, and then I know a guy because I actually designed our uniforms when I was C team coach. So I know a guy that works with like Nike and Adidas and all those companies that get you like that custom stuff. So it's like, hey, we raised all this money. We need you uniforms. And then I was like, how about an alternate too? So we got like we got a new varsity home and away. And then I
Oh
was
my
like, let's go
god.
gold alternate. I'll design them myself. And then basically spent all the money that we had just made. And then the season approached, and I didn't realize that we had to do like concessions and all this other stuff and like team gear. So I was like, fuck, we have no money again. And the parents like accused me. That was the first thing that got me annoyed with the parents is they accused me of like pocketing the money. And I
Sure.
was like, well, I didn't just shit out that brand new alternate uniform. So uh, we had to do like more fundraisers and stuff like that. And then it was just like the constant, just like complaints. Like my 5'8", 200-pound son isn't getting PT. And I was like, well, because he's not going to the NBA and he's not very good.
He has
So
an 11-inch vertical.
yeah,
That's
so
yeah.
that's kind of why. So just stuff like that, and like emailing people, and like most of the job that I think back on now, like I barely remember the basketball stuff other than like certain plays or certain wins. Just having to deal with like the day to day, like like one kid's skipping school and then showing up at the game that I don't know about, or like missing practices and
Yeah.
their parents emailing me, and it's just like it was a grind. And then I was like being 22, 23 at the time, handling all that. Like I'm having to put myself in the shoes of this like professional and kind of like not talk down, but just be direct to a group of, you know, 30, 40, 50-year-old parents that are
Yeah.
looking at me like, who the heck is this kid? Like, especially like some of the freshmen that were showing up. Like, this is the basketball coach here. Like, where do we send our kid to? But yeah, it was definitely a fun experience, and we had a decent amount of success other than that first year. Like I said, made the playoffs in our second year and ended up losing on a buzzer beater in the first round. So that sucked. That was my last game, and then yeah,
Damn.
don't coach anymore.
All right. Well, we can end the podcast there. I do want to say to the folks of Renton, especially when I put this out as a clip, because I think it's an amazing story, is
Shout out Renton.
yeah, Renton. I host a monthly comedy show in Renton at Bickerson's Brew House in the Renton Highlands. So come
Okay.
out to that. My buddy Todd Royce is headlining this week. This weekend on Saturday the 21st. Tickets still available. Call the tap room to buy them. And I'm gonna this is annoying for you, especially because you don't listen to the podcast. I'm gonna be at Tacoma Comedy Club hosting for Giannis Pappas all weekend, and then at Appleton, Wisconsin, at Skyline Comedy Club, headlining the Thursday and opening for Chris Frangiola the rest of the weekend. I'm gonna end the podcast there, but Kyle, stick around. And I'll talk to you for a moment after. Okay, is that all right?
Yep.
All right, hold on. Let me get this music playing.